All right, so we're going to be discussing SR 809/FA/1, which is Senate Resolution 809, but it's a amended edition of 809. Is that correct, Senator?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you can sit right there and pull that mic down if you don't mind.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, you should be on and ready to go.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I am here on behalf of Senate Resolution 809. It is, well, let me just say this. The genesis of the bill is a situation that cities like Atlanta and other cities have found themselves in when they have hired or entered into contract with a third-party parking enforcement. Here in Atlanta, that company is Park Atlanta. I'm sure I would be absolutely surprised if each and every member of this committee is not familiar with them by direct involvement. They have become a predatory, abusive company. There's no other way to explain it. They have preyed upon not only citizens of the city of Atlanta, but visitors to the city, and something that I think the committee would want to consider. They have also had an impact on small businesses. I have spoken to small business owners who have told me that their customers stop coming to their restaurants because they don't want to pay for dinner and then have a $200 appetizer, so to speak, on their windshield. And I've been told by folks, I have changed my dinner plans. I've changed my plans to come into the city because of the abusive things that Park Atlanta does. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you this. I have heard from state patrol officers that the state patrol cars even get Park Atlanta tickets. Hand up to God. Can you believe it? The people that are the thin blue line to protect you and me get tickets when they go in to have lunch down at the Waffle House. In any event, I'll be very honest with you. If I had my druthers, I'd like to prohibit third-party parking enforcement statewide altogether. I think that law enforcement, whether it's murder, arson, speeding, red light cameras, ought to be done in-house, ought to be done by government. When it comes down to law enforcement, it's best done by people who can be held directly accountable. I would like to prohibit it altogether. SR 809 does not do a blanket prohibition. I'm sure you've been spoken to, and sometimes when people explain a bill and they're self-interested, they don't get to the details of the bill. This does not do what I would like to do and prohibit third-party parking enforcement. In the spirit of compromise on the floor of the Senate, I authored, along with Senator Williams, I authored an amendment which puts restrictions, which puts common sense restrictions, which puts reasonable restrictions on third-party parking enforcement. I know I've been here for 20 years. I know some of you are long of tooth as I am. Some of you are newer members. And I would imagine that many of you, if not most of you, have voted for restrictions on speed traps, on red light cameras. What we have said as a legislature is that we need speeding enforcement, but it cannot be incentivized. That is, we don't even allow governments to incentivize speeding tickets. That is, they cannot be a revenue generator. They cannot be doled out based on the number of citations. Because when you do that, it tends to be abusive, and it becomes what? A speed trap. Same thing with red light cameras. They cannot be a revenue generator. The language that was added to Senate Resolution 809 is on line 20 of page 1. And it reads, where the compensation for such service varies in relation either to the number of citations issued or the amount of fines assessed as a result of such service. What that says is you can't base payment to the third-party company based on the number of citations given, nor...
Senator, let me interrupt you a second, but is everybody up with where the senator is? What line number did you say?
Line 20 of Section 2.
Okay, I got you.
You got me?
Mm-hmm.
Is everybody to get with me? Which it says you cannot do it in relation to the number of citations. Mm-hmm. You cannot give the employees of a third-party park enforcement company cannot say, well, cannot be told you have a quota of the number of citations. Reasonable restriction. 2, it cannot be given based on the amount of fines. For example, in the instance of Atlanta, Park Atlanta does $5 million, gets $5 million, gives the city of Atlanta $5 million straight up. Every year, annually, $5 million. Anything over that $5 million is kept by Park Atlanta. That would not be allowed because, it would incentivize them to what? Give as many citations as possible after that first $5 million. Well, it would incentivize them for the first 5 and incentivize them for the second after that as well. This does not restrict. If you want to do base it on a fee, if you want to say we're going to pay you X amount of money each year, regardless of how many citations, you'd be able to do it. This does not do away, as I would like to do, with it altogether. It's appropriate. It's a reasonable compromise. I know that there are companies, even as we speak, and people that collaborate with those companies that don't want even this reasonable restriction because they plan on extending or otherwise creating new contracts to gouge people a little bit more. But this is a reasonable compromise, Mr. Chair. I commend it to you. I'm available for any questions. I appreciate your thoughtful consideration.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the good explanation that you gave. I'm going to open up for questions, but I have a couple of questions myself. Who supports this bill? Have you got a list of anyone that has come out in support of the bill?
I'll be very honest with you. I have never, in my career up here, seen so much support from the public. And I apologize, Mr. Chair. There's an online petition of about 1,000 people that signed an online petition. And I can forward that to you and members of the committee. But I dare say I've never, ever had such a bipartisan. I got Republicans, Democrats, black, white, young, old, state patrol.
But you don't have a copy of that with you today?
No, sir. But I can forward that to you.
All right. The second question is, do you have a copy of the contract?
No, sir, I don't.
Have you seen a copy of the contract?
No, sir, I have not.
And
I've seen a copy of the contract. I will admit I have not thoroughly read it. The contract that I know that Park Atlanta has with the City of Atlanta, and City of Atlanta is represented here. City of Atlanta gets the first $5 million annually, and
but
then
you haven't seen the contract or read it, but you know it states that they get the first $5 million. Is that
yes,
what the contract says?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you've seen that yourself and read it, or that's just what you've been told?
Well, I have not heard it denied by anyone. City of Atlanta is represented here. They can correct us if I'm wrong.
And do you know when the current contract ends?
I think it ends in 2000, and it may end this year in 2017 or 2018. There's at least one more year on the contract. Okay. It's a 10-year contract from what I understand.
Well, we got several questions, and I'm going to save some of mine, and I think Representative, let's see who was first on the list. I believe it was Representative Williams who was lit up first.
Oh, thank you, Mr.
What number is that?
4. This is 4.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe you've asked some of the questions I was going to ask. Do you have the same sheet I have?
Yeah, right here.
Right here.
I gave you a copy of it, didn't
I? Senator Ford.
Yes,
now,
sir.
this will be a constitutional amendment for the whole state of Georgia.
That's right.
Is that right?
And the reason for that is I was told by legal counsel that in order to restrict something in terms of local control, it would be necessary to do a constitutional amendment. Legal counsel's advised me on that.
Okay. How long have Park Atlanta been serving the city of Atlanta? Do you know?
At least 9 years.
9 years.
As I said, they have one more year left on what I believe is a 10-year contract. But the city of Atlanta's here; they can speak to you about that.
Okay. Why such a lengthy time, 10 years, on a contract? Don't you think that to me don't help other businesses that may want to contract into Atlanta?
I have no idea why the contract. I do not have any idea why the contract was made that long.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the city of Atlanta can explain that.
Okay. That's it, Chairman. I'm sure somebody.
I appreciate those questions, and we have Representative Turner next.
Thank you, Senator. Are you aware of any other municipalities or local governments that there may be a potential abuse? Are there any others besides the city of Atlanta?
I know that there are other cities with.
Are you hearing any public outcry from them, or where are they?
What I was going to say is I know that there are other cities that do third-party contracts, and whether my research has been entirely on Park Atlanta, so I would not know.
So wouldn't it be true that there are areas that may be working with this model that you're planning to make a statewide ban on?
Yeah, I understand that, and what I would say to you is that the chances of speed traps being confined to any one place in the state are probably very slim. And so I understand your question, but what I would say is this would prevent any other municipality or locality from contracting with a company that's abusive.
But if it's working in, say, my home city of Holly Springs, I know there is no such contract, so it's safe for me to use this as a hypothetical, and it is just a hypothetical. So if my home city of Holly Springs had a contract with a third-party vendor for parking enforcement when we get our new downtown area that we're developing, and it was working for us, but it wasn't working in Atlanta, how would you reconcile those two scenarios?
Just because it's working on one place, I don't know if I would want to say that we shouldn't work to prevent it in another place. That's my answer.
Okay,
That's my
thank
best
you.
answer. Thank you.
Representative Price.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to ask that when you say
If you would try to, I'd help her out a little bit. I think you can get it. Well, try the last one down there.
Well, it wasn't. Okay, now it seems to be working. Thank you.
Okay.
When you spoke of abuse of the citizens, I guess my question would be, are those people feeling like they wanted to contest the ticket, or were they parked illegally?
Well, there's, the most common complaint that I've heard in, face-to-face on tweets is there's a great website up on this issue. The most common thing that I hear is that people are ticketed before their time is up. Okay, so you have 5-10 minutes left, but they get a ticket, and then the ticket rolls over within 7 days to double the amount of the fine. But I'm glad you asked about the appeals. The appeal process is Byzantine. It's designed not to accommodate people who think they've been wrong. And just recently, last week, I had someone tell me that they've tried to appeal it the one ticket 4 different ways, and they weren't able to get through, or they were put off. The appeal process is obviously intended not to be a process that's really of any use. And
is there a way to prove that somebody got a ticket when they still had money on the meter, or what have you? How can you prove that?
Some constituents have taken pictures of the citation, taken pictures of their ticket that the machine spits out, and it shows that the time had not elapsed when they got the ticket.
And then the appeal still was not successful.
It's you know, and most people, after 1 or 2 times trying to run the appeal process, they usually give up. This person I'm talking about was just energetic enough and stubborn enough to try 4 times.
Thank you very much. I do have a question since you
Yes,
brought
sir.
that up, and that was a very good question. But do you have copies of any of these citations? Do you have any of those pictures
No, sir,
with you?
I do not. I do not. But, I mean,
Representative, you leaving? No, sir. You coming back? I will do that. Okay. I didn't know where to wait to vote when you got back. So you come back shortly. You want me to vote now? No, not yet. But I want you to come back shortly. Yes, sir. All right. Let's see who's next on the list. Dukes, Representative Dukes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Ford, so is it your testimony that people are being ticketed illegally that people have told you that they're being ticketed illegally even when they have time on the meter?
yes, that is precisely what I'm telling you. And what I'm telling you is it doesn't happen every now and then. It happens often, and it's at its foundation just a predatory approach to enforcing law enforcement, parking enforcement.
Is it also your testimony that these people that there is a direct financial incentive for ticketing people?
Yes, because after that first $5 million, obviously their intent is to collect as much money as possible over that $5 million. You know, there's no, from what I understand, there's no cap. There's no cap on that. So the incentive is to get that first $5 million out of the way and then gouge people as much as you can and make as much as you can.
Do you know of any other agency with a law enforcement that is actually incentivized by giving tickets in that capacity?
Not now. I know, one of the things that we found with the red light cameras, we put restrictions a few years ago because we saw that becoming just a way to gouge people. And so we put restrictions on them. Since I've been here, we put restrictions on speed traps. And because of that, my answer to you is no. We've taken care of that business. I'm asking you to take care of this business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. And Representative Beskin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Fort,
Yes.
You mentioned problems with people not wanting to go out to dinner at certain places because of parking ticket problems. What is the limit of time you can get on a Park Atlanta meter? Is it 2 hours, 3, 4?
I believe it's 2 hours.
Does anyone know that?
But then you can go back and re-up.
No, but I would like to know the answer to that because I don't eat many 2-hour dinners, but I think it's conceivable for someone to eat a 2-hour dinner. So a meter maxed at 2 hours might discourage traffic to a restaurant, but if it's more than that, I mean, I think that's a relevant question.
It is, but it's not the 2-hour limit that discourages people.
Right.
It's, being ticketed before your 2 hours is up. So when you go out and try to re-up or to,
Right, and I think Representative Price had questions about that and good questions about whether they're actually doing that and how, if that happens to you, you prove, hey, wait a minute, I still had 5 minutes. But part of what I think I hear here is similar to what I think we heard on the floor of the House with the debate recently talking about putting surveillance cameras that automatically send out tickets if you're speeding through a school zone. And part of what I thought I heard in that whole debate was, we've always kind of had a privilege to speed if we thought nobody was really there. But if the speed limit is 35, you really should be going 35. If you got to pay to park, you really have to pay to park.
Yeah,
Thank
I don't
Mr.
disagree
Chairman.
with that.
All right, and I have to make sure everybody's in line here. Who's that? Is that you? Yeah. Okay, Representative McClain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you also, Senator Ford. I guess I heard your explanation on why it's necessary to mandate a constitutional amendment, but I guess I really didn't understand it. So so you said it was something in the law or the code that made it?
Yes. And if my explanation isn't adequate, I'm sure legal counsel can expand on it. But the way that legal counsel explained it to me was that in order to restrict the local government's ability to deliver a service, then we needed a constitutional amendment.
Okay. Just to follow up on that, my only other concern was, so we're only talking about parking. We're not talking about the next time facilities. I'm just trying to see exactly where we're going.
No, the only thing that this resolution involves is exactly that, third-party parking enforcement, not any other service that's provided. If anyone wants to restrict any other service, they'll have to introduce another resolution or another bill.
Thank you.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Ford, I'm looking down here at line item 12, and it says the number citation. A ticket is a citation, is it not?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you see the article that AJC did on several cities, I believe it was last year, that have been generating revenue in order to keep their cities open? I think Lula Whiskey, somewhere down near Jacksonville, was leading, and then there was several in DeKalb County who had about 10 feet of road that they was generating at least $400,000 worth of revenue from those citations. Why would this not fit the citation given speeding ticket
because
along
it says
with parking? But it does say citation, is it not?
Yes, but it says shall provide for the on line 10. It says provide for the surface of parking enforcement by the execution of a contract with a private enterprise with a compensation of such service, meaning parking enforcement. And I do believe, and that this is one thing that I just want to repeat and make clear, is that we do have restrictions on revenue generation for speeding tickets and for red light cameras. But this would specifically restrict, not prohibit, but restrict third-party parking enforcement citations. Because such services refers to the service stated on line 10, the service of parking enforcement.
Representative Caldwell.
Actually, it's
Oh,
me
is he?
again.
Okay, sorry.
I have actually a general inquiry. Do we have a member of Ledge Council here today, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
My question is around the mechanics of a constitutional amendment. This seems like a very local issue. Why is it not possible to take care of this through local legislation as opposed to a constitutional amendment?
I did not draft the original bill, and so that is not an issue that I have looked at. I did prepare an amendment to the bill, but in terms of why it is in the form of a constitutional amendment, unfortunately, I don't have information about that. I wasn't prepared to discuss it. I apologize.
Thank you. I have just a couple of comments to make before we see how the committee wants to proceed with this. But first off, a $200 ticket, is that if they run over the 2 hours? Is that the ticket amount for running over 2 hours?
No, no, sir. I believe
what's the $200 ticket? What would that be?
No,
for?
I didn't. I don't think I said $200 ticket. I said I was referring to
you saying
$200 dinner with a.
You said a $200 dessert. Right. I thought you meant
25. I think it's the $25 citation.
Okay. All right.
35. Representative McLean is fully aware.
Okay.
Of the menu.
All right.
That will run up to 95, but if you don't live in Atlanta, you can't get it back in a timely manner.
All right, and then here's the way I'm kind of just looking at some of the things you said, and one thing that bothers me, you don't have a copy of the contract, and you're not sure what the contract says about the $5 million, and you don't know.
No, I am sure that these.
Well, you know that somebody told you that, and
the city of Atlanta's right here.
Okay. All right, we'll talk to them if we need to. And then also, the contract, you saying it's incentivized to where Atlanta gets their money before anybody else, and they get to keep what's left. Well, there's no way for us to really know that because, again, I haven't seen the contract, and you admitted yourself that you don't have a copy of it or haven't read it. And then the proof of ticket, you complained that some of the people that had their tickets, but you don't have a ticket or you don't have these pictures or anything to show us copies of the lapse time that you said that this individual brought to you. And I guess as far as the rest of it, it's just it really bothers me that it's a statewide when it really could, if it's only an issue in Atlanta, they could handle this as we just talked about in a local way without involving the state and without having a constitutional amendment. And we've got 2 more questions, and then I'm going to cut it off at that, and we're going to see what the will of the committee is. And Representative Dukes.
Yeah. Senator, and for the members of the committee, my biggest issue with it is that we're incentivizing people to go out and give out tickets. And if you have that for an incentive, that I make money, my company, Dukes Edwards and Dukes makes money every time I give a person a ticket. I'm going to give out as many tickets as I can. And if it's a questionable issue as to whether or not you were right or whether you were wrong, so what? I mean, you paying me $10 an hour. That's what Park Atlanta's probably paying these people, $10, $15 an hour, plus an incentive for them to go out and write tickets. I think that is fundamentally wrong for people to be put in a position of authority and then given an incentive to ticket me. Now, if you need somebody to write tickets for somebody being late, the city ought to pay these people. And if you pay them, then there is no incentive for you to take a questionable effort, a questionable issue as to whether or not I'm 1 minute late or 2 minutes late. It is very difficult for me to operate within the city of Atlanta, downtown, and I do a lot of business there. I go to an office to meet with a person. I put 45 minutes. It's a 2-hour limit. I put 45 minutes on it. If I am not sitting there in the meeting watching my watch, I have to stop the meeting and go and put in more money. Now, we don't have that problem in Albany. We're glad for you to come. And if you get a ticket, let me know. I'll tell the mayor or somebody else. And then she will have directly to pay.
Dude, you got a question?
No, this is not the question time.
Well,
I thought
need
we
a
were
question. Do you have a question?
Is that not true?
Well, let me say this. All of it is true, and I just want to emphasize, if most of the questions that have gone unanswered can be answered by people in this room, I hope we would avail ourselves of all the resources we have in the room to answer those questions. But it is true, Representative Dukes. Thank you very, very much.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this question is really for Representative McLean. When you was given the ticket, were you in your legislative vehicle?
No.
Oh, okay then. Well, will legislators be exempt from this?
Absolutely not. And one of the things that I do want to say about legal counsel, and I want to assure everyone, and you could take my word for it, or we can go over and get the lawyer out of legal counsel right now. The fact of the matter is, I asked legal counsel, can this be done by a bill, or can it be done in any other way? Legal counsel said, no, it would have to be a constitutional amendment. I would much prefer a local bill or a bill to apply to one city. That was not possible. I mean, I'm not prevaricating.
Well, I'm
glad telling you what I was told by legal counsel.
I'm very happy to hear you say you'd rather see it done on the local level because I feel the same way. Representative Turner.
Since that was my question, I just wanted to respond to you really quickly, Senator, and I believe that you were told that. I just want to understand the why of why that is, because as these questions come up in our legislative, Yeah, and so I'd like to understand what their reason was, what specifically were they pointing to that would require it. I believe that you were told that. And
restricting a local service without a constitutional amendment would be unconstitutional without a second.
Okay, if no other questions, and what's the will of the committee? You know, I asked for people to sign up if they wanted to speak, and nobody did, but somebody might have come in late. Does anybody wants to speak? Yes. Sure. You can sit right over here if you'd like. That's why I like so much when I'm having a committee meeting. If you'll come up and sign up, then I'll know exactly where to go, but I think you did come in a little late, but you're also very welcome to be here. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you. I appreciate it. I was out talking in another bill. I'm Megan Middleton. I represent the city of Atlanta, and I just wanted to clarify a few things with this legislation and with the contract that we currently have right now. It is with Park Atlanta, and I'm not going to try and gloss this over. Nobody likes Park Atlanta. The contract is actually expiring this year, and it was the first time that the city had gone out for this, at least in some time that I know of, and we've learned from our mistakes. It was a contract that was brought about with the last administration. I believe this will be year 7. I don't believe it's a 10-year contract, but like Senator Ford, I too have not seen the contract, but I've asked for that term. We have changed when the Reid administration came in. We started. That's really when this had just kicked off, maybe a few months before. We had some concerns. We addressed those concerns. We tried to amend the contract as much as possible without actually breaking the contract, which would have cost the city tens of millions of dollars to get out of this contract. So it would have cost the city more than staying in the contract. We were actually approached the last administration by businesses, small businesses, who were losing customers because they couldn't pull up in front of the dry cleaner and run in and run out because somebody had parked there for hours. Some people were parking, and I understand that to some extent. They would park there on the street for free and go to their office for 8 or 9 hours. And small businesses were losing people who couldn't pull up and do a quick drop-off at the dry cleaners. They couldn't go to lunch for an hour. So that's one of the impetuses for this contract to begin with, and to spread out more of the parking enforcement. So they have changed times when they amended this contract, especially as you brought up in the entertainment areas. So Midtown around Fox Theater, the Buckhead area, where people do want to go to a show and go have dinner. And so they extended those hours because people were obviously 2 hours is not long enough to see a show and have lunch or dinner. So they have tried to address those issues. They're learning from this. This is a local issue, and it would, forbid anybody from entering into a parking enforcement contract with a third party. And each individual jurisdiction needs to figure out for themselves what works better. Does it work better to have a third party or not? For the city of Atlanta, it actually was a benefit for the city to do this. And like I said, we've had growing pains. We're learning from those.
Well, I do want to clarify one thing, that the amended bill does not prevent you from having third party. The bill that is amended that we're looking at today, the original one did.
Right. And I apologize. I do know that he, Senator, did amend that on the floor. But we are just concerned that it is, directed at a vendor that nobody is really a fan of how this has gone. This is like you say, a local issue, but it's being handled broadly statewide. And I can give other backgrounds. I've asked about the incentivized. I don't believe that is happening or that would happen in the future. That's not something that, incentivize local or the individual officers to do. That would not be something. But like I said before, I too have not seen the actual contract. I can get you, further information going forward. But I just wanted to give you some of the information. There is an appeals process. Nobody likes to deal with an appeals process, but they do work. And, learning from the mistakes of the group, the contract now is, there will be more stringent restrictions in any upcoming contract that there might be for this type of service.
Mr. Chair, may I respond?
Sure.
Obviously, whatever has been done to amend or ameliorate what Park Atlanta's done has not been sufficient enough. I'm sure there are a lot of my constituents, tens of thousands of them, that would be glad to hear that the appeals process is appropriate, works appropriately. But the question that I have for you, Ms. Middleton, is this: is the City of Atlanta at present contemplating a new contract with another company after this year? Will the city do an RFP or any other kind of request for proposals to any when this contract expires?
I don't know. I don't know what they're looking at. I think they're looking at all alternatives right now. But I don't have specific information on that.
Okay. Thank you.
I said I wasn't going to take any more questions, but since we have somebody new testifying, then I'll take 2 quick questions, and I think Representative Dukes, you were first.
Yes. The new contract that you all will enter into, or that you all are considering entering into, will there be an incentive by the contractor, the people that you all contract with, as part of their compensation to write tickets?
I don't know, since I don't know any specifics on that, but I have actually, asked a question, and I asked the question to our law department, and I'm waiting for an answer. But I don't know that. I personally can't contemplate that, but that's all I can say. I don't know any specifics to any future contract that there might be.
Would you have a problem with this, with a constitutional amendment that says that we will not incentivize people to write tickets for parking and make it be based on financial incentive, contracts that are based on financial incentives?
I personally wouldn't want to. I think you should amend your Constitution as little as possible. Any state or the country should, take great heed in when you amend the Constitution. I think for a parking contract or a local contract, that's you need to be careful about that. I know that there are other legal ramifications, and for when law enforcement is incentivized that way, as I believe one of your members brought up earlier about the speed tickets down in, I believe, South Georgia, where there were some cities and counties that were actually making revenues by doing this, and they got into legal trouble for that. And I think that it can be handled, that way. But well, I just
that would be the answer to it. That would be the answer to another question. My question was...
Last question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question was, do you think that parking contracts should be incentivized with financially to contractors for writing tickets?
Personally, no. I don't.
So.
Representative Turner. Is your mic on?
There it is.
Okay.
Thank you. Just one last question. Would you be open to providing for an exception for local legislation in your amendment so that, for example, it would say something along the lines of on or after January 1st, 2017, no governing authority of any county or municipality shall provide for the service of parking enforcement, blah, 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 except for by local act?
That is an amendment that I would that would be acceptable to me if it would help to
because I think that in that way
along.
It would create a double layer of accountability. You would have your local delegation would be accountable for this.
Mm-hmm.
But you would not be able to enforce this without passing local legislation.
I think that is an acceptable. I amended it on the floor to perfect it, and if that amendment helps to perfect it, it's an amendment that I would consider.
Do you follow what I'm saying, Chairman?
Yes, I do follow what you're saying, but since we're so far into this year and we're getting real close to sine die, I'd recommend that anything of that nature that needs to be changed, that we may bring it up next year and let Senator Ford, if this does not pass, that let him go back and revise it and bring it back next year. Yes, I do, and I've been trying to get to this all day. But what is the will of the committee? I want to call for a vote.
I move that Senate Resolution 809 be passed.
We have moved to pass. We have a second? We have a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All in of no, let it be known by like sign. No. Let's have a raise of hands. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, no. So the bill fails, and thank you, Senator Ford. And take in mind what was said here, and I think we get it back to the.
I took it in mind. I was going to accept it as a good amendment, and I thank you for offering it.
Okay.